What if I told you there was a man who possessed wisdom so profound that kings and queens traveled thousands of miles just to hear him speak? A man whose insights were so powerful that they've remained relevant for over 3,000 years. His name was Solomon, and he unlocked a secret that transformed not just his own life, but the lives of millions who came after him. But here's what's fascinating. Solomon's wisdom wasn't something he was born with. It wasn't inherited from his father or learned in the schools of his time. It was given to him through a divine encounter, and the principles behind that encounter are available to every single person watching this video right now. By the time we finish this journey together, you'll understand exactly what made Solomon's wisdom so extraordinary and how you can access that same source of wisdom in your own life. Are you ready to discover what the wisest man who ever lived understood about life, success, and purpose? Then stay with me, because what you're about to learn could change everything. Let me take you back to ancient Israel, to a time when a young man was about to inherit one of the most powerful kingdoms in the world. Solomon was the son of King David, the legendary warrior king who had united Israel and defeated all its enemies. But Solomon's story didn't begin in a palace surrounded by luxury and privilege. His very birth was marked by controversy and scandal. His mother was Bathsheba, and if you know the biblical account, you know that their story began with David's greatest moral failure. Yet despite these troubling beginnings, something remarkable happened. The prophet Nathan came with a message from God. The child was to be called Jedediah, meaning beloved of the Lord. This was God's way of saying that regardless of the circumstances surrounding Solomon's birth, he had special plans for this child. Can you imagine what that must have meant to Bathsheba? To know that God had not rejected her son, but had actually declared his love for him. As Solomon grew up, he witnessed his father's reign, the victories and the struggles, the triumphs and the failures. He saw what it meant to lead God's people. He understood the weight of responsibility that came with the crown, and when the time came for David to choose his successor, there was drama. David had many sons, and one of them, Adonijah, decided he would make himself king. He gathered supporters, held a feast, and essentially declared himself the next ruler of Israel. But this wasn't God's plan. Through the intervention of Nathan the prophet and Bathsheba, David was reminded of his promise. Solomon was to be the next king. The coronation was spectacular. They took Solomon to Gibeon, a sacred place, and there Zadok the priest anointed him with oil from the sacred tent. When the trumpet sounded and the people shouted, the celebration was so intense that the Bible says the ground shook with the sound. Can you picture that scene? The young prince becoming king, the nation erupting in celebration, and the sound reverberating through the valleys of Jerusalem. Solomon inherited more than just a throne. He inherited a kingdom that his father had spent decades building. David had fought countless battles, secured Israel's borders, and established peace with surrounding nations. The kingdom stretched from the Euphrates River all the way to Egypt. Tribute flowed in from neighboring countries. Israel was at the height of its power and prosperity, but with all this blessing came enormous responsibility. Before David died, he called Solomon to his side and gave him advice that would prove crucial. He told Solomon to be strong, to show himself a man, and most importantly, to keep the charge of the Lord. Walk in God's ways, David said, keep his statutes, his commandments, his rules, and his testimonies. This wasn't just a father's dying wish. It was a spiritual principle that would determine whether Solomon succeeded or failed as king. Now think about Solomon's position for a moment. He was young, probably in his late teens or early 20s. He was following in the footsteps of a legendary father who had killed giants, defeated armies, and was called a man after God's own heart. The expectations were astronomical. The pressure must have been crushing. How do you lead a nation when you're barely out of your teenage years? How do you make decisions that affect millions of people? How do you navigate political intrigue, economic challenges, and spiritual responsibilities when you have so little experience? This is where Solomon's story takes a turn that reveals the secret we're exploring today. Shortly after becoming king, Solomon went to Gibeon to offer sacrifices. This was one of the high places where people worshipped before the temple was built. That night, something extraordinary happened. God appeared to Solomon in a dream, but this wasn't just any dream. This was a divine encounter that would define everything that followed. In this dream, God made Solomon an offer that seems almost unbelievable. Ask what I shall give you. Let that sink in for a moment. The creator of the universe, the Almighty God, was giving Solomon a blank check. He could ask for anything, absolutely anything. No limits, no conditions, just name it and it's yours. What would you ask for if God made you that offer right now? Be honest with yourself. Most of us would immediately think of things we lack or want. Money, perhaps. Financial security for life, or maybe health, long life, freedom from disease and pain. Power might appeal to some, the ability to influence people and events, or perhaps victory over enemies, protection from those who want to harm us. These were exactly the kinds of things that kings in the ancient world typically desired. But Solomon's response revealed something profound about his character, something that unlocked the secret we're discussing. He didn't immediately jump to ask for personal benefits. Instead, he began by acknowledging God's faithfulness to his father David. He recognized that he was standing where he was because of God's grace, not his own merit. Then Solomon said something that demonstrated remarkable humility. "I am but a little child," he told God. "I do not know how to go out or come in." Here was a king, a ruler of nations, admitting his inadequacy. This wasn't false humility designed to manipulate God. It was genuine recognition of the enormous responsibility before him and his own limitations. Solomon continued by acknowledging the magnitude of his task. "Your servant is in the midst of your people whom you have chosen," he said, "a great people, too many to be numbered or counted." He understood that he wasn't just ruling any nation. He was shepherding God's chosen people, a responsibility that required more than human capability. And then came the request that would change everything. "Give your servant therefore an understanding mind to govern your people, that I may discern between good and evil. For who is able to govern this your great people?" Solomon asked for wisdom, not wealth, not long life, not power over his enemies. He asked for wisdom, specifically the wisdom to lead God's people justly. He wanted an understanding heart, the ability to discern right from wrong, the capacity to judge fairly and lead well. This request pleased God greatly. The Bible tells us that it pleased the Lord that Solomon had asked this. Why? Because Solomon's request revealed his priorities. He cared more about serving well than living comfortably. He valued wisdom over wealth. He prioritized the needs of others over his own desires. God's response was remarkable. "Because you have asked this," God said, "and have not asked for yourself long life or riches or the life of your enemies, but have asked for yourself understanding to discern what is right, behold, I now do according to your word. Behold, I give you a wise and discerning mind, so that none like you has been before you, and none like you shall arise after you." God granted Solomon's request. He gave him wisdom beyond measure, wisdom that would make him the wisest person who ever lived. But God didn't stop there. He added something Solomon hadn't even asked for. "I give you also what you have not asked, both riches and honor, so that no other king shall compare with you all your days." God gave Solomon everything: wisdom, wealth, honor, and even the promise of long life if he remained faithful. This divine encounter reveals the first key to Solomon's secret. He prioritized wisdom above everything else. He understood something that most people miss. With wisdom, everything else follows. Without wisdom, even wealth and power become meaningless or even destructive. Think about it. How many people have won the lottery only to end up bankrupt and miserable? How many celebrities with fame and fortune struggle with addiction and depression? How many powerful leaders have made foolish decisions that destroyed their lives and the lives of others? Without wisdom, success becomes a curse rather than a blessing. When Solomon woke from this dream, he returned to Jerusalem and stood before the Ark of the Covenant. He offered burnt offerings and peace offerings and made a feast for all his servants. This was his response to God's incredible gift, worship and celebration. But the real question remained: would this wisdom be real? Would it actually work in practical situations? The answer came quickly, and it would demonstrate Solomon's wisdom in a way that would become legendary throughout history. The first major test of Solomon's wisdom came in a case that has fascinated people for thousands of years. Two women came before the king, both claiming to be the mother of the same baby. These weren't noble women or people of influence. They were prostitutes, women from the margins of society, living together in the same house. The first woman presented her case. She explained that both she and the other woman had given birth around the same time, just 3 days apart. They were alone in the house with no one else present. Then tragedy struck. The other woman's baby died during the night. According to the first woman, the other woman woke up at midnight, realized her baby was dead, and switched the babies while the first woman slept. When morning came and the first woman woke to nurse her child, she found a dead baby. But when she looked closely, she realized it wasn't her child. The other woman immediately protested. "No," she insisted, "the living child is mine and the dead child is yours." The first woman countered, "No, the dead child is yours and the living child is mine." Back and forth they argued before the king. Here was Solomon's dilemma: 2 women, 1 baby, completely conflicting testimonies and absolutely no witnesses. How could anyone determine the truth? There was no physical evidence, no DNA testing, no modern forensic tools, no way to prove who was telling the truth and who was lying. It seemed like an impossible situation to resolve. Any judgment Solomon made would be a guess at best. Or would it? This is where Solomon's God-given wisdom shone brilliantly. He didn't need physical evidence because he understood something deeper. He understood human nature. He understood a mother's heart. He understood that the truth could be revealed not through evidence but through character. Solomon called for a sword to be brought to him. When the sword arrived, he made a shocking pronouncement. "Divide the living child in 2, he commanded, "and give half to the one and half to the other." The room must have fallen completely silent. What kind of solution was this? Was the wise king actually suggesting they kill the baby? Had he lost his mind? But Solomon knew exactly what he was doing. He was creating a situation that would reveal the truth through the women's reactions. The response was immediate and telling. The woman whose son was alive spoke up urgently. Her heart yearned for her son, the Bible tells us. "Oh my Lord," she cried out, "give her the living child and by no means put him to death." Think about what this meant. She was willing to give up her claim, to let the other woman raise her child, to never see him again rather than see him harmed. Her maternal instinct was so strong that she would sacrifice her own happiness to save her child's life. But the other woman had a completely different response. "He shall be neither mine nor yours," she said coldly. "Divide him." Her words revealed everything. She wasn't motivated by love for the child but by jealousy and spite. If she couldn't have a living child, neither should the other woman. She was willing to see the baby killed rather than let her rival have him. Solomon immediately gave his judgment. "Give the living child to the first woman," he commanded, "and by no means put him to death." She is his mother. The wisdom was breathtaking. Without any physical evidence, without witnesses or proof, Solomon had discovered the truth by understanding the human heart. A true mother would sacrifice everything to save her child's life. A false claimant motivated by jealousy would reveal herself through her willingness to see the child harmed. When all Israel heard of this judgment, they stood in awe of the king. They perceived that the wisdom of God was in him to do justice. This case established Solomon's reputation throughout the nation. His wisdom wasn't theoretical or academic. It was practical, penetrating, and perfect for the real situations he faced. But this was just the beginning. Solomon's wisdom would extend far beyond legal judgments into every area of life and knowledge. The Bible tells us that God gave Solomon wisdom and understanding beyond measure, and breadth of mind like the sand on the seashore. His wisdom surpassed the wisdom of all the people of the East and all the wisdom of Egypt. These were cultures famous for their learning and knowledge, yet Solomon exceeded them all. He was wiser than all the renowned wise men of his time. The Bible specifically mentions that he was wiser than Ethan the Ezrahite, wiser than Heman, Calcol, and Darda. His fame spread to all the surrounding nations. People came from all over the known world just to hear his wisdom. One of the most remarkable aspects of Solomon's wisdom was his knowledge of the natural world. He spoke of trees, from the cedar that grows in Lebanon to the hyssop that grows out of walls. He spoke of animals, birds, reptiles, and fish. Solomon was essentially the world's first great naturalist, studying and understanding creation in ways that amazed everyone who heard him. He saw patterns in nature that others missed. He understood relationships between different species. He recognized principles in the natural world that applied to human life. But Solomon's wisdom found its greatest expression in his writings. He composed 3,000 proverbs and his songs numbered 1,005. Many of these proverbs are preserved in the biblical book of Proverbs, offering timeless wisdom on virtually every aspect of life. The book of Proverbs begins with a clear statement of purpose. To know wisdom and instruction, to understand words of insight, to receive instruction in wise dealing, in righteousness, justice, and equity, to give prudence to the simple, knowledge and discretion to the youth. Solomon's Proverbs covered everything. He taught about relationships, money management, work ethic, speech, anger, pride, humility, friendship, marriage, parenting, leadership, and more. His wisdom was comprehensive and intensely practical. Consider some of his timeless insights. "Trust in the Lord with all your heart," he wrote, "and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths." This proverb reveals a crucial aspect of Solomon's wisdom. True wisdom begins with trust in God, not confidence in human understanding alone. Or consider this insight about the power of words. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruits. Solomon understood that our words have creative power, capable of building up or tearing down, encouraging or destroying. On wealth and poverty, he wrote, "The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is the slave of the lender." This practical financial wisdom is as relevant today as it was 3,000 years ago. How many people today are enslaved by debt, controlled by lenders, trapped in financial bondage? Solomon saw this pattern and warned about it. He also wrote extensively about diligence and laziness. "Go to the ant, O sluggard," he wrote. "Consider her ways and be wise. Without having any chief, officer, or ruler, she prepares her bread in summer and gathers her food in harvest." He observed nature and drew lessons for human behavior. The ant works diligently without needing supervision. She plans ahead. She prepares for the future. These are principles for success in any generation. But perhaps Solomon's most profound wisdom is found in the book of Ecclesiastes, where he reflected deeply on the meaning of life itself. After experiencing everything life had to offer, all the wealth, pleasure, achievement, and fame anyone could want, Solomon concluded, "The end of the matter, all has been heard. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man." This was Solomon's ultimate conclusion after trying everything. After building massive projects, accumulating incredible wealth, enjoying every pleasure, achieving international fame, and experiencing everything the world offers, he concluded that the meaning of life comes down to one thing: fearing God and keeping his commandments. Everything else, he discovered, was vanity, a chasing after wind. Solomon also wrote the Song of Solomon, a beautiful poetic celebration of love and marriage. This showed that his wisdom extended even to the most intimate aspects of human relationships. He understood romantic love, sexual desire, commitment, and the beauty of marriage between a man and woman. Solomon's wisdom attracted international attention. Kings from all nations sent representatives to hear him speak and learn from him, but perhaps the most famous visitor was the Queen of Sheba. She traveled over 1,000 miles, crossing deserts and mountains, just to test Solomon's wisdom with hard questions. When she arrived, she came with a large caravan, with camels bearing spices, gold, and precious stones. She asked Solomon all the questions that were on her mind, and Solomon answered every single one. Nothing was too difficult for him to explain, but it wasn't just his answers that impressed her. When the Queen of Sheba had seen all the wisdom of Solomon, the house that he had built, the food of his table, the seating of his officials, the attendance of his servants, their clothing, his cupbearers, and his burnt offerings that he offered at the house of the Lord, there was no more breath in her. He was completely overwhelmed. She told Solomon, "The report was true that I heard in my own land of your words and of your wisdom, but I did not believe the reports until I came and my own eyes had seen it. And behold, the half was not told me. Your wisdom and prosperity surpassed the report that I heard." The Queen of Sheba recognized something crucial. She understood that Solomon's wisdom came from God. She blessed the Lord who had delighted in Solomon and set him on the throne of Israel. She saw that this wasn't just human intelligence or learning. This was divine wisdom flowing through a man who had sought it above everything else. Solomon's wisdom also manifested in his building projects. He built the magnificent temple in Jerusalem, a structure so glorious that it became one of the wonders of the ancient world. The temple took 7 years to build and employed tens of thousands of workers. Every detail was carefully planned and executed with precision. The stones were cut and prepared at the quarry so that no hammer or chisel was heard at the temple site during construction. The interior was overlaid with pure gold. The craftsmanship was extraordinary. Solomon also built his own palace, which took 13 years to complete. He constructed entire cities, fortifications, and even a fleet of ships for trade. His administrative wisdom organized the kingdom efficiently. He appointed 12 district governors who provided food for the king's household, each responsible for 1 month of the year. This system ensured steady revenue and provisions while distributing the burden fairly across the kingdom. The prosperity during Solomon's reign was unprecedented. The Bible says, "Judah and Israel were as many as the sand by the sea. They ate and drank and were happy." This was the golden age of Israel, a time of peace, prosperity, and international prestige. Silver was considered as common as stones in Jerusalem. Wealth flowed into the kingdom from trade, tribute, and commerce. But underlying all of Solomon's achievements was a secret, a revelation that made everything possible. This secret wasn't just about being intelligent or educated. It was something deeper, something spiritual that connected Solomon to the source of all wisdom. Solomon himself revealed this secret clearly in his writings. "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is insight." This is the heart of Solomon's secret. True wisdom doesn't begin with human intelligence, education, or experience. It begins with a proper relationship with God. The fear of the Lord doesn't mean being terrified of God. It means having reverent awe, deep respect, and recognition of who God is. It means acknowledging that God is the source of all truth, understanding, and wisdom. It means submitting our minds and hearts to Him, recognizing that His ways are higher than our ways and His thoughts higher than our thoughts. Solomon understood that without this foundation, all human wisdom is ultimately foolish. He wrote, "There is a way that seems right to man, but its end is the way to death." Human wisdom, disconnected from God, can lead us astray no matter how logical or reasonable it seems. We can be smart and still be foolish. We can be educated and still be lost. We can accumulate knowledge and still miss the point of life entirely. This revelation explains why Solomon's first request to God was for wisdom rather than wealth or power. He understood that wisdom from God was the key to everything else. With divine wisdom, he could lead justly, make right decisions, prosper in his endeavors, and fulfill his calling. Without it, all the wealth and power in the world would be meaningless or even destructive. Solomon also understood that wisdom must be actively sought. It doesn't come automatically. He wrote, "If you seek it like silver and search for it as for hidden treasures, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord gives wisdom. From His mouth come knowledge and understanding." Wisdom requires intentional pursuit. It's like mining for precious metals or searching for hidden treasure. You have to dig deep, invest time and effort, and prioritize the quest for wisdom above other pursuits. You can't be passive and expect wisdom to fall into your lap. Another crucial aspect of Solomon's secret is that true wisdom is practical, not just theoretical. It produces results in real life. The New Testament describes the wisdom that comes from above as first pure, then peaceable, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy and good fruits, impartial and sincere. This describes Solomon's wisdom perfectly. It wasn't just intellectual knowledge stored in his mind. It produced practical results in every area of life. However, Solomon's story also contains a sobering warning that we must not ignore. Despite his incredible wisdom, despite his divine encounter, despite everything God had given him, Solomon made tragic mistakes later in his life. The Bible tells us that Solomon loved many foreign women. He had 700 wives and 300 concubines, and his wives turned away his heart after other gods. In his old age, Solomon's heart was not wholly true to the Lord his God, as was the heart of David his father. This is perhaps the most tragic aspect of Solomon's entire story. The wisest man who ever lived failed to apply his own wisdom in his personal life. He violated the very principles he taught others. He wrote extensively about the dangers of sexual immorality, yet he fell into that trap himself. He warned about turning away from God, yet he did exactly that in his later years. How could this happen? How could someone with such wisdom make such foolish choices? This teaches us a crucial lesson that we must take to heart. Having wisdom and living by wisdom are two different things. Knowledge alone isn't enough. We must apply what we know consistently throughout our entire lives, not just in the beginning. Solomon's failure wasn't due to lack of knowledge. He knew better than anyone. His failure was in application and consistency. Perhaps success made him complacent. Perhaps prosperity led to pride. Perhaps the very blessings God gave him became stumbling blocks when he stopped depending on God for wisdom and started relying on his own understanding. The consequences of Solomon's unfaithfulness were severe. Because of his turning away from God, the Lord told him that the kingdom would be torn from his son. Only one tribe would remain with Solomon's descendants, and that was only for the sake of David. The united kingdom that David had built and Solomon had expanded would be divided after Solomon's death. The golden age would end. Yet even in this tragic ending, there's wisdom to be gained. Solomon himself wrote about his mistakes and failures in Ecclesiastes. He reflected honestly on his life, his achievements, his pleasures, and his failures. He concluded that apart from God, everything is meaningless, vanity, a chasing after wind. This honest reflection is itself a form of wisdom, learning from our mistakes and warning others so they don't repeat them. So what is Solomon's secret? What is the revelation that every seeker must understand? Let me summarize it clearly. True wisdom comes from God alone. It cannot be found through human effort, education, or intelligence alone. It begins with reverent fear of the Lord, recognizing who God is and submitting to Him. It must be actively and continually sought, like searching for hidden treasure. It's not automatic or passive. It applies to every area of life, not just religious or spiritual matters, but government, business, relationships, and every human endeavor. It produces practical results and good fruit in real life, not just theoretical knowledge, and it must be consistently applied throughout our entire lives, not just known intellectually. Solomon's wisdom wasn't about having a high IQ or extensive education. It was about connection to the source of all wisdom, God Himself. When Solomon prioritized this connection and sought wisdom above all else, God gave him wisdom beyond measure and added everything else besides: wealth, honor, success, and influence. But Solomon's story also warns us that we can have great wisdom and still fail if we don't consistently apply it. We can know the truth and still choose to ignore it. We can start well and finish poorly. This makes humility and dependence on God essential throughout our entire lives, not just at the beginning of our journey. The application of Solomon's secret to our lives today is profound and intensely practical. First, we must recognize that true wisdom is available to us just as it was to Solomon. The New Testament tells us, "If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given him." God hasn't changed. He still gives wisdom to those who ask in faith. The same God who appeared to Solomon in a dream is available to us today. Second, we must prioritize wisdom above other pursuits. In our modern world, we chase after so many things. We pursue success, wealth, pleasure, fame, comfort, security, and status. But Solomon's example teaches us to seek wisdom first. Everything else will follow. Jesus echoed this same principle when he said, "Seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be added to you." When we prioritize our relationship with God and seek His wisdom, everything else falls into proper perspective. Third, we must apply wisdom consistently in every area of life. It's not enough to have head knowledge or to know the right answers. We must live what we know. This requires discipline, accountability, and continual dependence on God. Solomon's failure reminds us that no one is immune to temptation or beyond the possibility of falling. We must remain humble and vigilant throughout our entire lives, never assuming we've arrived or that we're beyond the need for God's guidance. Fourth, we must recognize that wisdom is relational, not just informational. Solomon's wisdom flowed from his relationship with God. When that relationship deteriorated, his wisdom became merely intellectual knowledge that he failed to apply. Our pursuit of wisdom must always be connected to deepening our relationship with God through prayer, worship, studying His Word, and walking in obedience. Fifth, we should study and meditate on Solomon's writings. The books of Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Solomon contain timeless wisdom that is as relevant today as when it was written thousands of years ago. Reading a chapter of Proverbs daily, there are 31 chapters, one for each day of the month, can transform our thinking and decision-making over time. Finally, we must share wisdom with others. Solomon didn't keep his wisdom to himself. He taught, wrote, and shared freely with everyone who came to him. When we gain wisdom, we have a responsibility to help others grow in wisdom as well. This creates a legacy that extends beyond our own lives and impacts future generations. Solomon's secret reveals that the pursuit of wisdom is not optional for those who want to live meaningful, successful, fulfilled lives. It's absolutely essential. In a world filled with information but often lacking in true wisdom, we desperately need what Solomon discovered. We need wisdom that comes from above, wisdom that transforms how we think, decide, and live. We need wisdom that produces good fruit, that brings peace rather than chaos, that builds up rather than tears down. The good news, the incredible news, is that this wisdom is available to us. God hasn't hidden it or made it accessible only to a select few. He offers it generously to all who ask, seek, and knock. The question is not whether wisdom is available, but whether we will prioritize it. Will we seek it as Solomon did, above wealth, power, and pleasure? Will we value it more than comfort, success, or status? As we conclude this exploration of Solomon's life and wisdom, we're left with a choice. Will we apply Solomon's secret in our own lives? Will we seek wisdom from God with the same passion and priority that Solomon demonstrated? Will we learn from both his successes and his failures? The revelation is clear and unmistakable. Wisdom from God is the key to navigating life successfully. It's the secret to making right decisions, building meaningful relationships, achieving lasting success, and finding true fulfillment and purpose. Solomon proved that when we seek God's wisdom first, everything else follows naturally. Wealth came to him without asking. Honor came without seeking. Success came as a byproduct of wisdom. But Solomon also warned us through his tragic failures that we must remain faithful and apply wisdom consistently throughout our entire lives. We cannot rest on past encounters with God. We cannot coast on previous blessings. We must pursue God and His wisdom continually, from the beginning of our lives to the very end. This is Solomon's secret unveiled, a revelation that every seeker must understand and apply. The wisest man who ever lived has left us a roadmap. He's shown us both what to do and what to avoid. He's revealed the source of true wisdom and warned us about the consequences of turning away from that source. May we, like Solomon in his finest moments, seek wisdom above all else. May we fear the Lord, which is the beginning of wisdom. May we apply what we learn consistently, avoiding the tragic mistakes Solomon made in his later years. May we finish well, remaining faithful to the end. The path of wisdom is before us. The choice is ours. Will we walk in it? Will we seek the God of Solomon with all our hearts? Will we prioritize his wisdom above everything else this world offers? The same God who appeared to Solomon, who gave him wisdom beyond measure, who blessed him abundantly, is available to us today. He hasn't changed. His promises remain true. His wisdom is still available to all who seek it. The question is, what will you do with this revelation? How will Solomon's secret transform your life starting today?